Okay, oh, yes, I'm on. Good afternoon, everybody. Just wait for you guys to settle down. Okay, there's a few late people coming through. There's a few seats at the front, I'm afraid. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Alison King. I'm one of the Professional Development Executives at UCAS. I'm going to spend about the next 20 or so minutes going through some of the updates that are happening at the moment. There's quite a lot of information to get through, and all of it is very important. So I'm going to try and leave a bit of time at the end for questions. What I will say is I'm going to have to go through this at quite a high level because of the amount of information there is. All of this information is available on the UCAS website, so I do stress to actually go on there and have a look at this information in more detail after this session. So the first thing I'm going to cover, the admissions process review, or the APR review. This came out today. The findings and recommendations of this review have been published today. You may have heard about it on BBC News this morning. So again, this information is available on our website. We are currently going through a Qualifications Information review as well. Really liking our reviews at the moment. I'm going to give you some information about student number controls, and again, it's high-level information I'm giving you, but I can't stress the importance of you guys reading this information online and getting an understanding of what this means for your students. And then finally, some information about the changes for the 2013 cycle, of which there are very few, you'll be pleased to know. So first of all, the admissions process review. Can I just get a show of hands who's aware that we've run an admissions process review? Okay, a few of you. Great. And of those of you that raised your hands, did anybody have any input into this review? Okay. Right. Like I said, the findings and recommendations were published today. Basically, the review started in 2010 and has just been completed. Went to UCAS board a couple of weeks ago. It has been a massive review about the whole admissions process. The process that we're all aware of has been running for about 50 years, and apart from a few tweaks here and there haven't been any major changes. Yes, it all went online, but then so did everything else. So we were looking at some of the changes that need to be made for us to keep moving with the sector, the changes in the types of students that are applying, the types of courses that are available, and all the issues that come along with this. So this has been quite a major process that we've been going through. We ran this consultation across the country. We held events in Edinburgh and Glasgow, involved people from HE, pre-HE awarding bodies and other sectors as well that are involved within HE. So it's been quite a large consultation. Okay, so it was commissioned to ensure the system continues to be effective and an effective shared service, and that it remains fit for purpose regardless of what various governments are going to throw at us and that sort of thing. We need to be moving with the times. So quite a lot of responses there, like I said, and we're going to have a look at the proposals that have received support and the proposals that didn't receive support. Now, there are a lot of proposals in there, so I've just picked out the ones that I think are most pertinent to you guys at the moment. But again, please go onto the UCAS website. It's right there on the front screen at the moment, the outcomes of this review, and I think it's really important if you can read this information. So the proposals that received support, starting at the top, My UCAS web portal. This would be available on the UCAS website for students to use and get information about courses, even to the point of being able to put in information such as, this is the type of course I'm taking, these are the grades I've gained or I'm expected to gain, what kind of courses can I be applying for. So that's just one example of the type of information that will be used on the My UCAS web portal. Okay, and this will start to aim at students at a lower age group as well, so not just those that are ready now to start applying to higher education, but also a bit earlier in the year so that they can start to think earlier in advance. The ability to upload documents, including portfolios. So as you imagine, for example, students applying to art and design courses having to send through portfolios of information, that kind of information will be able to be uploaded onto the apply system. So when they submit the form, that information goes along with it. This would also include information, international students, for example, qualifications information could also be added onto this. In improved terminology, CFCI, DBD, RBD, insurance choice, etc., etc. Now, we have to keep up to date with a lot of these changes, so you can imagine for the average student, we get thousands of phone calls every year about terminology. What does unsuccessful mean? We're not allowed to use the term reject, it sounds too harsh, but when they don't understand unsuccessful, what do you say? So we will be improving the terminology. I appreciate that conditional firm, conditional insurance, 17 years old, applying through the system, why would that mean anything to you? So these are the sorts of things that we need to improve on. Better guidance for referees. So again, these are things that we need to work with the HE sector, with universities and colleges to provide better guidance for you guys. Some of the universities are absolutely brilliant with the information that they put on their websites about references, about what they're looking for, but that will differ from course to course, sometimes from one admissions tutor to the next. So it needs to be more obvious to you guys what kind of information you need to be providing. Pop-ups and wizards, I don't think they mean the ones with pointy hats, but I don't actually know which ones they mean, during the online application. So what tends to happen at the moment is a student will put some information in and the system may say to them, are you sure this is correct, but will allow it to go through anyway. So they've had that kind of nudge, but they can ignore it. And when that information gets through to universities, they may also see a flag saying, well, we're not definite that this was supposed to be put here or that this has been missed, that kind of thing. So the idea is that these things will be put in instead and give them even more of a prompt and make them actually change that information if we think it's not correct. Tailored section of the personal statement. Now, for those of you that did read this consultation, there was a bit of, is there going to be multiple personal statements arriving? It's bad enough getting them to write one, let alone 5. The idea will be that there will still be that one standardised personal statement, but there will be an opportunity for universities and colleges to set up specific questions about a particular course or for their university as a whole. So when the applicant puts that university choice on the application form, when it comes to filling out the personal statement, they may be prompted to answer particular questions. Now, how that's going to work logistically in terms of who sees what, we still need to work this out, but obviously invisibility for those sorts of things will still need to apply to protect the student. The option for a new personal statement in Extra and also the final application window, I'll come on to that in a moment. For those of you who've had students going through the Extra system, one of the bugbears is that they apply to 5 history courses and then for whatever reason decide to go into geography. And they've got a history personal statement sat there on the system. Now, a lot of universities will allow them to send that through, a piece of paper, send it through, but it would be a lot easier if they could do this online. And I would hope it would be a lot easier as well if this is something that you guys can also see before they submit it through the Extra system. So this is something else that we are looking at. The final application window is basically clearing. Okay, issues with the terminology of clearing, how students view it, and clearing in general, there's been a lot of issues. So this is going to be changed to the final application window, and I'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a moment. And then finally, we discussed, is an insurance choice needed? Is it wanted? And the answer is yes, it is still required. However, how that insurance choice is used will differ greatly between applicants. And there are thousands of applicants every year that pick an insurance choice that's asking for the same or higher grade requirements than their firm choice. Now, in some cases, that can't be helped. If everybody's asking for the same or similar grades, what's the student supposed to do? But in other cases, they're not necessarily understanding what an insurance choice is about. So we will be introducing information when they make those choices to make sure that they are happy and they understand what will happen if they make that particular choice their insurance choice. Okay, so these are the proposals that have received support. Proposals that will not be implemented, for those of you that have been keeping an eye on this is the one that everybody has obviously been concerned about and has been talking about. It's something that's been branded for a long time as PQA, Post-Qualifications Application System, or Post-Results Admissions Model as it's now being called. That has been discussed extensively within this model, and whereas perhaps the idea behind it that students apply when they've got their grades is a good idea, the implications of that, the logistics behind that are huge. we talked about looking at changes of exam timetables, for example. You guys would have shorter time to go through exams. The awarding bodies have shorter time to mark the exams, giving more time for students to apply later, already knowing their qualifications. The knock-on effect for something like that is absolutely enormous. So that is not happening. But there are some things that were part of that model which will be implemented, some of the tweaks which we think will make a better application system in the future. But don't worry, you don't lose your holidays. We're not moving exam timetables at all, so you can breathe a sigh of relief on that one. Reduction in choices. This wasn't actually something that we put into the consultation, but it's something that kept coming back to us time and time again from people that did respond. There is not going to be a reduction in choices. Moment. Everybody seems pretty happy with the 5 choices. There's no reason really, there's no reason to kind of move to 4 or 3 choices at the moment, so students will continue to have their 5 choices. Moving the 15th of January equal consideration deadline, again that one won't be happening. That was maybe not such a popular choice. And also changing the branding of Apply or Extra. We were looking at kind of going through an Apply 1, Apply 2 and Apply 3 system. But that isn't going to happen at all. We're going to stick with Apply as it is and also Extra. I could say the one that really has the negative connotations is clearing. And that is why we're looking at calling it Final Application Window. So the idea behind the changes in clearing would be that obviously we've got a lot of work to do with this and we need to talk to awarding bodies as well, but potentially that awarding bodies get the exam results to institutions earlier, even if it's by 3 or 4 days, giving institutions time to make those final decisions on applications. And then potentially, if it were to happen, have a break between those decisions being made and clearing or the post-application window starting. The idea for this would be that everybody would go through that post-application window if they needed to at the same time, rather than a first come first served basis. As we know, for some students you get the grades, you get the place, brilliant. For other students you don't quite get the grades, you sit there waiting for a week, 2 weeks for the university to make a decision. Elsewhere other students are getting those places. We also know that on results day that it's fastest finger on the button sometimes for getting places at university. If you can get on the phone as quickly as possible, happy days. Otherwise, even if you're better than the student that gets the place, it happens to be that they got to the phone quicker than you did. This isn't fair, and this is something that we need to look at. So this is why we're going to be looking at changes around the clearing system. However, that said, that's not going to be happening until at least 2014 at the very earliest. And it will be the smaller tweaks that we can do within the system that will happen at that stage. Okay, there's a lot of work that still needs to go on behind this. We need to speak again to the universities, to colleges, to schools, to teachers and to students as to how all of this is going to work. Like I say, I've given you a very short snapshot of the admissions process review. Like I say, please go onto the website and read the information behind that. So this one has happened. This one is still happening. Consultation is still running. There is still the opportunity until the 16th of April to go onto the website, look at the information and answer the questions to the consultation. We need feedback from you guys to understand the changes that need to happen. And this is the area of the website. So the Qualifications Information Review started off as a review of the UCAS tariff. Was it still fit for purpose? Was it doing what it needed to do? It got bigger than that, and we started looking at how qualifications are used, what information is needed by universities and what information is needed by students and by yourselves as advisors as well surrounding qualifications. So what qualifications are used for entry into higher education? What institutions like which qualifications? What do they consider to be a good qualification? All of that sort of information we need to get up to date and into a centralised place for all to see. So this is what we're currently consulting on. And this is some of the reasons. I appreciate that the Scottish institutions in particular won't actually use the UCAS tariff, but if students are looking to apply maybe to areas in the rest of the UK, they could be asked about tariff offers, or certainly information about tariff points will be on the UCAS website on entry profiles. So this is just a few feeds from Twitter as to how students view the UCAS tariff, and it is quite distorted. They're of the understanding if they get tariff points from their I won't name a qualification, but from a particular qualification that it's going to get them a place at university. No, it's not. Yes, there are points equated to that qualification. It doesn't mean that they're going to get that entry. So I've obviously also knocked out a few choice words as well. But it's just given that understanding that some of these students, you know, they're not going to university for another 5 years, but because they've taken various music qualifications, they've got enough points for a course. Probably for a music course, yes. But if you're applying to that geography course, probably not. You know, the university might be very happy that you've taken that music qualification. Doesn't mean that they're going to use it as part of their entry requirements. And this is a big misunderstanding amongst a lot of students. And like I said, a number of universities won't use the tariff at all. A lot of Scottish institutions don't use it. Talk to students, schools about the International Baccalaureate and the tariff, and you get things thrown at you. So, you know, there's a lot of issues behind the tariff. It worked very well at the time, but it's been a few years down the line, and we need to look at alternatives. So, these are the 6 key recommendations that have come out of the consultation so far, and these are the things that are posed to you guys on the website to have a look at, to understand it and see what your thoughts are around these. I'm not going to go into every single one. I'm just going to pick out a few that I think are important for you guys to know at this stage. Qualification Information Profile, known as QIPS, because we like our acronyms. This will be information on those qualifications, and it will pull information from sources that are already available. So SQA, for example, we will pull information from SQA and put it in a centralised database for all to see. And obviously on various other qualifications as well. So that students understand these qualifications, advisors understand them, and so do HEI staff as well. A lot of new qualifications keep coming through, and half the time people aren't even aware of what they are. I know it's probably not applicable here, but for example, BTEC qualifications, there's about 30 odd BTEC qualifications out there. Half the time students don't know what they're taking, half the time the teachers aren't really sure what they're taking either. You put the wrong qualification down on the form, and that can make the difference between having that place and not having it. So it's really, really important that people understand the details of the qualifications. As I mentioned, we're looking at actually phasing out the tariff altogether, and would like your feedback on this. I must stress that we'll be phasing out the tariff. We're not just going to have it on there on Thursday and remove it on Friday, off we go. It will be phased. So we're looking at grade-based entry requirements and offer making, so everybody understands what they need to be doing. Okay, I'm going to skip a few here, but I do want to mention this one as well. UCAS will also produce an annual report on qualifications, how they've been used, percentage of what qualifications are being used, grades, that sort of thing. Okay, and I think that could be very interesting for you guys to have an understanding of you know, the popularity of certain qualifications for certain subject areas, etc. So again, a lot of work to go into these areas. Okay, so that's the qualifications information review. So that's 2 reviews, one's down, 1 to go. Please have a look at that information. The third thing that I want to stress the importance of is student number controls. Now I am showing HEFCE here, which is the Higher Education Funding Council for England, but this particular part will affect your students if they are applying to HEIs in England, okay, and I will come on to Scotland in a moment. So there has been changes in the funding, obviously for students looking to apply to England, or for English students applying to Scotland, there is a charge now of up to £9,000. If your students, Scottish students, are applying in Scotland, they're not paying, but if they're applying elsewhere, they'll be paying that up to £9,000. If English students are applying to Scotland, they will be paying up to £9,000 as well. So HEFCE have brought in some student number controls around this. Consultation last summer, and the message was communicated in October 2011. People are still getting their heads around some of the details. And again, I stress you do look on the website to get more detail on this. Okay, so again, affecting students applying to English HEIs. For applicants that have been predicted, the HEFCE AAB plus or equivalent, and I will give equivalences here in terms of Scottish qualifications. Now, bear with me, these are HEFCE equivalences. So let's go with Scottish Highers. Equivalences to the AAB plus would be, for example, 5 A's at higher, 4 A's and a B, it's higher. Going right down to 3 A's, 2 C's at higher, 3 A's, a B and a D at higher. That's some examples of the equivalencies to the AAB situation here. So I'll go on a bit more and come back to that in a moment. If they are predicted, any of these or equivalents, some of these I've just said, HEIs are free to recruit as many of these students as they wish. They are outside of this student number control, okay? So the idea is that there's so much money in the pot for students, but if they're hitting these targets, then they are allowed as many of these students as they want. Obviously, there's still going to be some restriction. If it's a science course, there's only so many Bunsen burners available. But they work out their own restrictions around these types of areas. As I said, these are HEFKey equivalencies, and these are the only ones that are acceptable. So I've mentioned Scottish hires here. Advanced hires are not on the equivalency list. Okay, it's hires. The others on the equivalency list, A-levels, BTECs, Irish Leaving Certificate, International Baccalaureates, there's some postgraduate courses there as well, and also a first degree. For the equivalency list, again, look on the UCAS website. If they fall outside of those particular qualifications, if they're taking advanced hires, and if they're getting, for example, an AAB, they're not falling into this area anyway, so they will still fall in within the student number controls, within that pot of students, so that institution is allowed. Anybody confused yet? Yeah. Okay. This is not linked to the UCAS tariffs, like I say, it is their equivalencies, not UCAS equivalencies. There is a core allocation student number controls, and 20% of the institution's student number control limit will be protected. And for those students that are applying to institutions, again English institutions, who are going to be charging less than 7,500, there could potentially be more places in these particular institutions as well, but each institution's had to bid for places. There are exceptions to these rules as well. One of those would be the civ subjects. So there are certain subjects where they won't fall within this area. So examples like medicine and some language courses as well would be classed as the strategically important and vulnerable subjects as decided by the government. Okay, so that's in terms of students potentially applying to English institutions. Obviously, HEFKey isn't involved in the Scottish institution area. But for the students applying in Scotland, what they need to be aware of is that students from the rest of the UK applying to Scottish institutions will be paying to apply to Scottish institutions. So Scottish institutions will have a pot of students that they have to stick to. So let's say institutions allowed 1,000 students for their Scottish and EU allocation. They have to stick to those 1,000 students. If they go above or under, then they're looking at fines, the same as other institutions within the UK. However, the rest of the UK, so students applying maybe from England or Wales, will fall outside of this pot. So they could potentially have more students coming in from the rest of the UK if they wanted to, because they won't fall within their student number controls. What does this mean for your students? Well, you may have already noticed it. I think Dundee on their website, for example, and this could be happening on other institutions' websites, are being quite specific about which students they are now looking for. So, for example, on Dundee, they are now showing their extra courses, what's available, and they may be saying this is now only available for rest of UK. This may already be closed to Scottish EU students because they fall within that pot of allocated numbers that they can't go over. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's important that your students are aware of this. They may think, well, why is it closed to me and not to the rest of the UK? That will be the reasoning behind that. Okay, I've given you a lot of information about that, and these are some of the impacts. Please go onto our website, look at the information. It's specific to they've got it for specific areas, so for Scottish applicants. And there's also, if anybody read UCAS News, which I think was out last month, we also sent information about student number controls. What could this mean in terms of the likes of confirmation and clearing as well? For students that maybe have been predicted they fall into that AAB plus or equivalency category, if they've been predicted in that area and they don't get those grades, there's a chance more now than ever that they won't actually get a place at that institution, because they're going to fall out of that free-for-all area and they're going to fall into that pot where you have to meet those numbers. However, on the flip side of that, for those students that have been predicted 3 Bs, for example, or 5 Bs, for example, and they actually find themselves falling into the other area of the AAB+, they could potentially get themselves a place at another institution by using adjustment. Okay, so there could be more scope for them to move around. So again, you need to try and get your heads around these and get an understanding of what this means for your students. Okay, I've probably given you quite a headache now. So yeah, course closures for different qualifications. They could produce financial incentives to attract target students from particular areas of the UK, for example. Busier extra and clearing. More unsuccessful decisions for highly qualified applicants if perhaps they've just missed that particular grade that they need. They've been pipped to the post. They may not get the place where they may have done in other years. So try and get your heads around these. This has obviously just happened this year, but it is something that's going to be ongoing. Institutions have stressed to HEFCE that they would like to see it just stay the same for next year so that they can get their heads around it as well. But chances are it may change again. Okay, so just be aware of student number controls and what this can mean for your students in the next few years. Okay, and that just shows where the information is on the UCAS website. Okay. Right, on an easier, slightly happier note, I've stressed you all out. Changes for 2013, quite short and sweet because we're doing the admissions process review, so we figured there'd be enough changes in a few years' time. We'll just do a few now. Okay, these are kind of more, I guess, irritants to a certain extent that we have tweaked for this year. The applicant password for both apply and track from now on will be case sensitive. What's been happening in previous years is it was not case sensitive for apply, it was case sensitive for a track, and it confused applicants because they didn't have to worry about it before and then they did when they used track. So, like I say, it's an irritant, it causes you stress, it causes phone calls to us, so they will both be case sensitive for 2013. Data share with the Scottish Awards Agency. The applicants now will receive a reminder email when it's time to actually apply for student finance. Okay, so that's the case now for 2013. One that is not a minor irritant but quite a major irritant. For those of you that use the staff apply system, if an applicant had registered on the application form and they'd linked it to your school or college, and then you had started the reference side of things before they'd added on their qualifications, you could potentially have submitted that application with no predicted grades on it. And we know that that was happening quite a lot. So, on staff apply, when it gets to the stage where you guys are about to submit it through to UCAS, and I'm sure you probably do it with a batch of students, it will basically flag up all of those students where no qualifications have been entered and get you to recheck it. So it's not a flag on the student side, it's a flag on the staff apply side. And even if the student plays around with this area, I have no formal qualifications, etc., it is still going to pick up on this and ask you guys to double check it. Okay, because obviously that is a major, major concern. Applicant fees, they're going to be a change that's yet to be decided. Chances are it ain't going down. We'll wait and see. And then finally, Course Finder. We've had the course search facility for a number of years now. We have now introduced Course Finder, which is currently running alongside Course Search. It is still in the pilot stages. Start to get to know it with your students, start to use it. It will be a better tool in the future. But like I say, we're still at early stages with this. So you will be using it in the future, but at the moment it is there alongside the Course Search facility. That is pretty much it for the changes for 2013. Just to highlight, and I've been talking to a member of the SDS staff today as well, that we want to do a lot more work in Scotland, get up to here more often. We're aware of the implications of cost and that sort of thing. But this is something that we have set up. It's already full now. We've got about 36 advisors attending this. Information went out to schools and colleges recently about this event. I'm going to get details of SDS advisors within the area as well, so we can start to send you guys information when we're going to be in the area. If you want us to maybe do sessions with you guys, etc., that is something we can get in touch about. Okay, and just to advise that we are there if you do want any sessions, any training at all. Okay, I've taken you through a lot of information, a lot of high-level information of what is very detailed stuff. Probably got maybe a couple of minutes for a few questions, if anybody has any, if I haven't just stunned you too much, which I have. Yes.
Is it possible that it might be construed, possibly by cynics, that the student number controls and the sort of allocating of a certain number for Scottish students is aimed at basically attracting fee-paying English students to Scottish universities?
That is something you would need to talk to, to the guys that control the student numbers, because that is the case in the UK as well, is that they will have a pot of how many students they're allowed, give or take obviously that slight change now with the AAB plus, etc. But they still have to meet a core allocation, and the rest of the UK and with Scotland, if they go above or below that, then they are losing money, and it's really important that they do stick to that. But yes, obviously with the rest of the UK applying to Scotland, the fact is that they will be paying money to Scottish institutions, and that money is going directly to those Scottish institutions, but that's not really a question I can answer, I'm afraid.
Hello. What is the position as far as youngsters with learning disabilities are concerned, who might be able to go with slightly fewer qualifications than other students?
Is this in terms of student number controls?
It's in terms of student number controls. I just wondered if they were asked for, say they were coming in with a couple of A levels, so rather than 3 A levels, or being asked for 3 hires instead of 4 hires, what would the position be?
Right, okay. That is a question I can't answer at this stage. I think you need to speak to individual institutions, but they will need to obviously adhere to these restraints that are through HEFCE. Certainly I know you can't see that, but certainly the English institutions will have to stick to these areas. So in terms of the Scottish hires, it is saying best 5. Okay, so again, I take your point with that, and I will take that back to UCAS, because although this isn't something that UCAS has been involved with, we obviously work very closely with them, and we can disseminate information back to them, so thank you for that.
In terms of the Scottish equivalent to the hires equivalent to the English hires or GCSEs or A levels that you've got, is there any advanced hires taken into consideration, or is it best that the kids just don't do them because they weren't on your list?
Right, just to stress, this is not the UCAS list, okay? This is a HEFCE list. This has nothing to do with UCAS. At the moment, advanced hires are not on this list. Whether or not that changes, I do not know. This is something that HEFCE need to decide. But absolutely not. I mean, institutions will always be happy for students to be applying with advanced hires as well. But I can't answer that question, I'm afraid. This is a HEFCE decision. Okay, we'll take possibly 2 more questions. I think there's a lady over here as well afterwards.
Hi, just in terms of advice for students, we have real confusion at the moment, because different universities in Scotland for the same courses are asking for different qualifications, so that some universities, and it won't be the university as a whole, it's the faculty admissions office for whatever the subject is. Some universities are looking for advanced hires, some people are saying no, we don't want advanced hires, we want a breadth of hires, so you need to be taking more hires. It's becoming very, very difficult to advise pupils, and that's only going to increase with the change of qualifications coming in.
Absolutely, and I think this is where the Qualifications Information Review will come in useful, and hopefully it will be more transparent to students about what universities are looking for, what they're asking for, and in terms of things like that annual report, for example, that will give information on the previous year, so it'll be solid information. for universities themselves, what they tend to base their decisions are in terms of, okay, we're looking for this many hires or advanced hires, is potentially what's happened the previous year. And of course, things can change throughout the year, and that gets very, very difficult for that to maintain. If in the previous year students have applied and you know, let's just say across the board they've got in with 5 Bs at high or something like that, then they're going to set that as probably their basic entry level, and then the next year everybody that's applying is actually getting 3 As and 2 Bs predicted at higher. So all of a sudden that level goes up, and those students that are applying at that 5 Bs level potentially are not going to get those places, or find that if they apply slightly later, are they going to be disadvantaged because they've had so much higher coming through in the meantime. It's very difficult for institutions to really gauge that from one year to the next. It does change, but I appreciate that is an issue, but that is down to individual institution level. But what I think is important is that it's more transparent, and that is, like I say, hopefully where the qualifications information review will come in useful. Okay, there was a final question in the corner. Okay.
You talked about, when you were mentioning about the portal for putting in subjects and the portfolio upload, what's the timescale for that?
Don't know at the moment. Like I say, earliest for those types of changes through the admissions process review will be 2014. Something like my UCAS portal is going to be enormous. It's going to be a huge thing to develop. So, you know, this is going to take time. We're looking at the technology that we have at UCAS at the moment. So 2014 at the earliest for a lot of these proposals. Okay. Right, okay, I probably need to move on because I think we've probably got another speaker. So thank you very much for your time. Sorry if I've scared you, but please go onto the website and look at the information.